Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gary Murphy, and I am Professor of Politics here at Dublin City University. It is a great pleasure to host and chair this event to introduce you to our taught postgraduate offerings here at the university. We have a long and we think distinguished history and culture of offering a cutting-edge taught postgraduate programs, and we have a very exciting lineup of both distinguished alumni and of colleagues to talk you through why you might come and join us at DCU. And we'll kick into that straight away, but for now we will hear a brief video message from our president, Professor Dara Keogh. Dara took up office back in July of 2020, and he has proved to be an inspiring leader for us. So I will pass you over to Professor Keogh.
Hello, you're very welcome to this afternoon's postgraduate event. Making a decision to embark on postgraduate studies is not something that you undertake lightly. It's a big investment in terms of your own time and also the financial cost. But I'm delighted that you are thinking of developing yourself, first of all, and that DCU is part of that decision-making process. We have a wonderful range of programs. I think we've over 70 postgraduate taught programs available to you, and those are developed with future needs, future skills, but also professional and personal development in mind. Our colleagues in student recruitment have put together a nice schedule of events for the afternoon. They cover questions from graduates about why invest in yourself. In some cases, that's about passion. In some, it's about professional development. And maybe some of you are thinking of reinventing yourselves entirely and moving in a different direction. This afternoon's seminar, I think, will help you towards that end. There's also an element where graduates and recent students are reflecting on their experience and why they chose and what they learned through it and advice that they would offer you. Critically, there's a session on how to fund postgraduate studies. So I'm delighted that you're thinking of DCU. We are renowned for our innovative approach to teaching and learning, but the thing I'm especially proud of is the extent to which we put our students first, that our purpose is your success. And some of the indicators of that are reflected in the metrics, like DCU is Ireland's #1 in terms of graduate employability. So I'm delighted that you're here with us this afternoon. I hope you enjoy the experience, and I hope that many of you will follow your passion and come to DCU, where our purpose is to match your passions and your ambitions towards the best effect. So welcome again.
Thank you so much, Professor Keogh, for those very inspiring words, and I think you give a good sense of what it is like here at DCU. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce Alda McDonough. Alda is a very distinguished alumnus of the university, who has had to use the word distinguished again, a tremendous career in business over the course of the last number of decades. She is currently the founder of Frankly, and has had a distinguished career in Morgan McKinley and loads of other organizations, too much of which are to mention. Alda also has a very long career in society. She is a board member of Women for Election, on the judging panel for the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. And Alda, it's a great pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you so much for giving us of your time.
No problem, Gary. Delighted to be here. Always delighted to support DCU. It's a fantastic university.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm a graduate myself at the university, and I never left after I graduated. So we might kick straight into it. You might give us a bit of insight into the value of a postgraduate degree in the current climate.
Sure, yeah, delighted to do that. So I suppose I'm speaking on this topic really from my perspective of being an employer and having worked for a long time in the recruitment industry. So I would have seen over particularly the last 10, 15 years maybe, the growing prevailing nature of people having a postgraduate qualification. So I think that's the first thing to say, that for a lot of careers, it's moved from being a fantastic differentiator to actually being a necessary hygiene factor almost. That's the bar just keeps raising and raising in education. So that's one thing for people to figure out, whether it's an absolute requirement or something that will differentiate you. But the fundamental reason I would say for doing a postgraduate qualification is that you really want to get the skills, get the knowledge, and that you'll enjoy it. And I'll maybe come back at the very end around ways to enjoy it. But it's really important that the motivation for doing it is that it's something that you're really interested in. And that will then come across very, very much when you go to interview, that it's a real commitment to an area that you want to work in, or you want to have a career in. But as I said, first and foremost, make sure it's an area that you're really interested in and that you'll enjoy. It's also a gateway to academia. Gary, you said there before, or Martin said before, after your graduate, you stayed in academia. But for a lot of people, as you go through a career executively, then people move to non-executive. Often a move into academia is a very attractive choice for people, and the postgrad is one of the stepping stones into that. I think another real reason from an employment perspective of doing a postgrad is it's a time where people build a really interesting network, and it's a network into academia and your students. There's possibly a slightly different relationship between the lecturers and the students on a postgrad versus an undergrad. And there's often collaborations and projects and research studies that emerge. And there's just a very, very interesting way to build a network. And that network extends back out into the world of work as well. Another reason for the postgrad related to work is earning power. That whilst it's a hygiene factor for a lot of fields of study or fields of work, it is also a way to make faster progression into higher earning roles or earlier promotions. And with the world of work being so ever-changing and innovative, the postgraduate skills that you gain, not just the knowledge of the subject, but actually your development as a person, it sets people up hugely for faster career progression. So I think that's really important, those prospects. And I guess another, and I appreciate I'm rattling through these quite quickly, but another really important point about a postgraduate is it is a career change crossroads. It's a point in time where somebody may have been on a particular trajectory career-wise, and they either want to reinvent or they want to completely pivot. But having a postgraduate as the rationale or the credibility when they do that is a really good way to do it. And I would say that it's never too late to do a postgrad. I'm halfway through one myself at the moment. I didn't do one straight from college. I went out into the world of work with my undergraduate, had lots of training and development in the world of work, but always felt I wanted to come back and do a postgrad, which is what I'm doing. So it's interesting doing it later in a career versus very early on. They're just two different experiences, I guess. But they'd be some of the reasons why, and I'm sure that's not an exhaustive list, but I'm sure there's some of the reasons why a postgrad will really add value to somebody career-wise.
Yeah, and you're out with our colleagues over in IADT doing cyber psychology, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and what is it like as a student now for you? And why are you doing a postgraduate, for instance?
Well,
why now?
First of all, my experience has been entirely online because I started it in mid-2020. It was actually a great time to be doing something as intensive as a postgrad studying, because there was a real focus for that time of change with everybody dealing with lockdowns and COVID, etc. But the cyber psychology angle of things for me was my original undergraduate in DCU was in international marketing, where consumer behavior was a large part of the marketing strategy thinking. And cyber psychology is about how humans behave and interact with technology. So for me, it was about extending and future-proofing my skills, which were, already, 2 decades in the past. So it's a really good way of updating my relevance, I suppose, to the world of work. But
Yeah.
But the experience, one thing I suppose I'd say about the experience is being able to do it part-time is a really interesting way to do it. And one of the things I think I would encourage anybody looking to do the postgrad, if you are doing it part-time, it's trying to negotiate enough time to do it well. Because what I observe is some people who are in extremely busy jobs, extremely busy career moments. And actually the postgraduate studies have to either be dropped halfway through, which is a terrible shame, or they're under an awful lot of pressure. And I think it's almost a shame that people aren't able to sorry, there's a phone ringing there, that people aren't able to carve out enough time to do it well. And that's only a few hours a week. But it's being able to do that, I think, would be a good tip.
And perhaps one final question, Alda. You have spent your career dealing with people, really. A lot of work in human resources, and I mentioned your work with Women for Election and Entrepreneur of the Year. And at the end of the day, employers are employing people, and isn't it? Would you say, in relation to doing a taught postgraduate, that it is part of the person as a whole, and an important part, I think?
Yeah, completely. And I think one of the things is the qualification, the program, whether it's cyber psychology or something in politics or something there's so many programs that can be done. It's really about how it improves you as a person overall. And when it comes to writing CVs, it comes to interviews, or even talking with your own organization about why you should be considered for promotion and progression, or a new division that's being set up, whatever the scenario is. I think being able to sell yourself well in the totality. So thinking about the thesis that you'll have written, thinking about the critical thinking skills, the presentation skills, the team working skills, all of these softer skills that you will absolutely need and have built on while you're doing the postgrad is absolutely key. I think the fact that if you're doing it full time, you may well have built out a lot of extracurricular activities. There may be some mentoring that you get involved in doing, but I think when it comes back to the world of work, thinking about the experience in its totality, not just the qualification that you got. I think that's where you talk about a return on investment of the money that you're about to invest. It's, that's where it really hits the ground running as well. So there is a long list of skills. And finally, another thing I would say just around the CVs, I would make sure, don't assume that people know what is the content of the postgraduate course.
Yeah.
And actually spell it out module by module, spell it out. I have studied this, I have written essays on that, I have done a project on this, or because the richness over the year or 2 years of learning is really huge.
Yeah, and just before you go, I think one of the things we have striven to do in DCU since even you were an undergraduate, and in the postgraduate scheme, is to treat people as people, and to say we're investing. The university is also investing in you as much as you're investing in the university. And we used to have a statement: big enough to count, small enough to care. And whatever about maybe being too big now, I think we still are. That care that we offer our students is a very important part of it, because at the end of the day, we are sending students out into the world of work to be employed by people like yourself, with a parchment and with a degree, but also with we think something more that they'd have got from DCU. And I think you've given us a great snapshot and insight into what that is. So listen, you're very good for giving us your time, Alda. I know you're a very busy person. We really appreciate it here. As you know, we're all very proud of what you've achieved as a DCU alumnus, and hopefully our paths will cross again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, my apologies about the phone. It's actually in another room, so I don't know what happened there, but anyway.
It's part of the Zoom world we all live in now, so not at all.
Great. Good luck with the rest of the session.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alda. That's great. Thank you. Great. Well, that was a tremendous start to our afternoon. I think everyone will have got an insight into what a postgraduate degree can lead to and can leverage. I think the important point there is, again, this postgraduate degree is not simply for entry into the world of work, but it'll be very useful in terms of work progression. So now it's my great honor to introduce my longtime colleague, Martin Maloney. Martin has been in the university nearly as long as I have, perhaps even longer, Martin. We go back a long way, but Martin has a kind of very distinguished record as an educator and researcher in the School of Communications. He has driven, I think, postgraduate education in the School of Communications and across the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and indeed across the university. He is well recognized as being one of the leading voices and champions for postgraduate education in DCU. And Martin, I think that's enough for an introduction. As I said, have a long history with us. So perhaps you might share some of your thoughts again of the importance of postgraduate education for our quite large viewing population now. And I probably should have said at the beginning, everyone is very welcome here, and we hope this will be of benefit. Martin.
Thanks very much, Gary. It's interesting hearing Gary and Alda talk there about people doing postgraduate courses. And they focused for a little while on it being about people. And I was asked to talk to you today about the best way to make a postgraduate application. I suppose the title I was given was how to make a postgraduate application stand out from the crowd. And whilst I had my own ideas about what made the good ones, given the many thousands that I've looked at through the years, when I did an online search and looked at what other people were saying, it struck me very well that there were two kinds of things that I felt and that other people had also covered. And one was about getting it right, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the second part was about being yourself and that person. Because when we consider applicants for postgraduate study, we are thinking about people. We are looking for people to join our student cohort. And what we want you to do is find a way of telling us about you as a person. So that's really what I'm thinking about. So I'm going to try and share some slides with you. If we can do that. There we go. Now, I think you can see that. And okay. So the first thing I'd say is to cover the basics, because whilst I talk about the importance of a person and that we want to know about you, if people don't get the basics right, then we're not in a position to get past that and look at the person or consider the person who's applying. So it's important that we cover the basics. And that may very well be the different things that you're asked to provide, just a checklist of things. Have you provided the different documents that we require? And if there's toing and froing, and if there's things missing, well, you're starting off your relationship with us. You're on the back foot, and it often distracts us from getting to know you properly. So make sure you give yourself enough time to prepare your application and to check again, have you all the pieces that you need, the pieces of the puzzle to tell us about yourself. Some aspects of the application will be optional. Some courses will say we must have a CV. Other courses will say you may give us a CV, you may not. I think if you're in any doubt about whether to include something, you should add it. Speaking to colleagues down the years, I know that we talk about situations that we're missing documents. oh, it's terrible, we didn't get a copy of, or we're waiting for a copy of. I've never heard anyone saying, it's terrible, the applicant sent me a copy of their CV, or they sent me something I didn't want. It doesn't matter, it'll stay there and we look at it. And if it's not immediately of interest to us, well, we can skip past it. So if you're in any doubt about submitting something that's reasonable or that's part of the normal list, please do include it. And that lets us have the option of considering that as part of your application. There are the other basic aspects, and I think you have to remember that you're applying as a postgraduate applicant, which means that we would consider you've already been through university, you have achieved a good standard of university education. And so you've got to make sure that there are no silly mistakes, no little things that trip you up, that just show you're organized and that you've thought about it. And unfortunately, we do come across situations where somebody just hasn't done it right. And there's basics that we would expect. The first thing is that in your application, you address everything. I already spoke about you having all the documents you need, but also if the application said, we want you to tell us about, well, go and do that. Make sure you've covered all the things that the course requires of you. The second thing is in your application, either within a personal statement that I'll talk about in a moment, or your CV or a cover letter or whatever, show that you know about the course you're applying for, that you understand it. And if that course has highlighted certain things to describe the course, make sure you get a chance to mention those to show that you know what you're getting into. The other thing is that you have to take time doing this. And if you take your time doing it, when you present the final set of documents, that will show. We will be able to read between the lines and we'll be able to see, this person has thought about this. So give yourself time to do that, put some thought into it, and that process will give us a better impression of you. Be genuine about this. Alda and Gary earlier were talking about people and being a person. Be yourself. I'll come back to this idea later on, but it's important that it's you who's doing the application. Use your own voice, be genuine about yourself, and talk to us directly. Don't try to be somebody that you think we're looking for. Lots of problems with that. If everybody does that, then we'll get 100 applications that look the same. And also, we want to know you as an individual, because we want to have a class that has lots of different people with different perspectives and different experiences. So don't be afraid to be yourself. Be real. Another fundamental is that you would present the application properly. Have it nicely formatted and be consistent about the documents you upload, or all PDFs or whatever. Just get the fundamentals of presentation right. Don't make any mistakes with spelling or grammar. This is postgraduate level. We assume two things. One is that you are well prepared, and if you make mistakes, you've had time to fix them before we see them. And the other thing is that if you're applying for a postgraduate program, we assume you're able to clearly express yourself. Part of that is being grammatically correct and having no spelling mistakes. Just the fundamentals. I've seen it where people say, oh, look, that thing is full of mistakes. And they don't read what's behind it. They never get a chance to get to know you because we've dismissed it out of hand. We go, oh, that's sloppy there. And it's very difficult to come back from mistakes like that. One of the things we ask you for are your results transcripts. And students have often said to me, or applicants indeed, have said, well, do I have to give you a transcript of each year? I did a 3-year degree. Do you not just want their certificate at the end? Why do you want each year transcript? And it's really important. It shows us the range of subjects you've done. I think Alda made reference to this earlier on. If you've done a degree in journalism, well, we want to see you did news reporting and you did feature writing. Predictable enough. If you've done a degree in business, and I see you've done accounting and you've done HR, but you might have taken an extra module in a slightly related way, or you might have had choices. And having done those choices, might make you a more rounded person. And we want to know that person. So it's important that we can see the range of subjects. We know the degree you've done and we can guess the kind of subjects, but we want to see the actual subjects and the emphasis and the perspectives that you got from doing that. The other thing it does is it shows us your strengths, sometimes your weaknesses too, but the weaknesses can make for an interesting person. We can see that you're particularly strong on maybe mathematical areas, or you've more strength where you have more academic subjects or practical experience, whatever it might be. But by having each year's transcript, that allows us to get a handle on that. And of course, then we look at your transcripts across the 3 years or the 4 years of your degree, and we can see your progress, your journey. We can see maybe, oh, they had a problem there, they fell down, but look how they picked themselves up and got on with it. Really useful for us to know that. It might also be that perhaps you excelled as you went along, or perhaps we can see subjects that build upon each other, and we can see how you're able to use information and apply it to the next stage. All of that tells us a great deal about you. The other item in your pack will be a curriculum vitae, a CV. And many courses insist that you submit one. Other courses, it's an optional factor. I think it's a good idea where you have the opportunity to submit a CV as part of your application, that you would do so. It's a useful way of telling your story. Bit of advice, keep it simple, a nice simple layout. Now, even this layout I give you here is probably more complicated than it needs to be, but it's nice and clean and fresh. Try not to be too fancy about it. No need to go into color and graphics and all the rest of it. Keep it clean and keep it simple. Looking back on the experience I've had and where CVs have worked well, I think generally it comes about 2 pages seems to be right. Any more than 2 pages, you're running into the difficulty where you're telling us information that's not immediately relevant or going into too much detail. And less than 2 pages, where it's only 1 page, chances are you're leaving something out, or you may just be trying to squeeze everything onto 1 page. So I think for a postgraduate application at a university, you should be aiming to have a 2-page CV. Obviously, for jobs of one kind or another, might be a different matter. But I think for this situation, you should expect your CV to be about 2 pages long. Don't be afraid to tailor or to personalize your CV for whatever course you're applying for. People often think, oh, I have a CV. It's done. It's in the drawer. It's on the computer. And every time I want to use it, I just pull it out. Well, if you're making an application for a course in engineering, you may present your CV differently than if you are making an application for a course in medicine or in history. So do take the time to look at a CV and say, well, this is the CV I'm submitting for this course. What can I do with that now to make that CV more applicable or more appropriate to the course I'm applying for? Take the time and trouble to do that, because CVs aren't a universal tool. You know, I've done it once and I reuse it all the time. Make it more important, give it more value. And you'll do that by looking at it, highlighting particular things that are of relevance to a particular program. And again, sorry, I've just said that bullet point to highlight particular information that will help state your case or present you as more appropriate for a particular degree. And be specific, particularly about your interests. You know, don't just say reading. Tell us what kind of books you like to read, or if you were, if you've got a particular hobby, don't just name it. Give us some specifics. So you're captain of something. Did you do something? Did you achieve something? Because again, when we consider these documents, and if we're talking amongst ourselves to decide on who will be offered a place, I've never heard anyone say, oh, did you see that application where that young man said he was reading? Very interesting. It's much more likely we'll say, oh, did you see the application where that woman said she loved murder mysteries, or where somebody was the captain of the rugby team that did such and such a thing? And you tell us more about yourself. So give us more detail, that sort of thing. It makes your CV work a lot harder for you. And part of that is your personality. We're back to what Alda and Gary mentioned. about people. And we want people to join our university. So we want to know about you. So try not to have the CV too factual. Get little ways of putting in things about you that gives you a sense of who you are. And the other thing is, realize that the CV you're giving us is for a postgraduate course. Excuse me. The fact that you won an egg and spoon race when you're in kindergarten probably shouldn't be on the CV. But seriously, if you're going to postgraduate, we want to see your results for your undergraduate course, perhaps not your results for when you were in primary school. Okay, so you think, well, what is still useful? What's still relevant? So you're taking a step from undergraduate to postgraduate. So what's more important? So keep it proportionate in terms of what things are reasonable for us to know and what we want to know about. If you try and list too many things that are not relevant, then the important things get lost in those lists. So just think about it and keep it proportionate. A couple of don'ts warning on your CV. We all like to present ourselves as well as we can. Absolutely. And please do that, but don't exaggerate. The difficulty with that is we've seen so many of these down the years, and we can see when something doesn't ring true. And perhaps if there's a follow-up interview, you'll be on the back foot because we'll be asking you about something that maybe was an exaggeration. So tell us the whole truth about yourself. By all means, show your best side, but don't stretch the point too much. The other difficulty I see with CVs from time to time is that there's gaps, either gaps in time, in the chronology of your life in the CV. They've left something out. And that raises a flag with us. Oh, they've left something out. And we think, well, are they trying to hide something? Or is it that they forgot something? So they're disorganized? We don't always do interesting things every year of our life, when we jobs and go to university. Sometimes we do things that aren't as important, but put a line in to explain that. Maybe you went off and joined a convent or a monastery, or worse again, maybe you came to work in a university, but put the line in just to explain what you did in that period. And the other gap might occur in explaining something. Perhaps you change direction in your career, and we look at the CV and we go, oh, that's odd. I wonder how that happened. Well, a little line just to explain, well, based on this, I had an opportunity to do this and I took it up. So don't leave gaps that might raise questions in our minds. Don't include spelling mistakes, a reminder of the basics from earlier. And back to the fact that we want to know about people. Don't try to be somebody else. I know that in looking at an application, you might think, oh, they're looking for this particular candidate. Well, I will describe myself exactly as that, and that way I'll get in. But that doesn't do any good. We can see that the person you describe isn't you, but also you want to be the right fit for our course. So we want to get to know you and then know, will you work well on this course? There's no point in getting onto a course that you're not suited for. The other document that is of importance is a personal statement. And we use these in DCU, and many other universities ask for them also. And it's about your story, about yourself. It gives you a chance to give more depth than what you might have in a CV. Do remember to write one personal statement for each course you're applying. Don't, again, like the CV, have a general personal statement and put it out there. Think about it and tailor the personal statement for a particular program. Some programs will ask you for very specific things in the personal statement, and you need to go and check, have I covered those points? Other programs will just ask you for a general personal statement. So do know which one applies in which instance. And again, we want to know about you, the person. So use your own voice in it. Try not to use formal language. Talk in your own voice. And I suppose the overriding aspect of this advice is that you should be confident to be yourself. We want to know about you. We don't want to know about some artificial ideal candidate. So dare to be yourself. That personal statement. What's your story? Tell us about yourself. Be specific, give details. And in that personal statement, you can say, I'm interested in such a thing, but why? Tell us what made you interested in it. And join the dots for us. The more details, the more specifics, the better. In the personal statement, you should also relate to the course to show you've done your homework and you're ready for the application. And then connect your story with the course so that someone reading can go, oh, this person does these things and we're offering this. Oh, that fits together very well. So do take that opportunity to do that. Check again, what are the college looking for with a personal statement? Have they said, we want you to tell us X, Y, and Z, and go down and make sure you have all the points covered? And do get somebody else to proofread the personal statement. The problem with proofreading ourselves is that we read what we think we wrote, not what's on the page. So write it, get someone else to look at it, and get them to go down through it and to find any mistakes. We all make mistakes. You've just got to take the time to fix them before you send it in to us. A couple of don'ts on the personal statement. Don't tell us how wonderful the college is. We know that already, but seriously, you will be able to say, I would like to apply to DCU because DCU is very good at medicine. I want to do medicine or engineering or whatever it might be, and make that connection, certainly. But please don't try to over flatter us. I've seen situations in a personal statement where someone has taken it from the website, our own words, a couple of sentences about DCU, directly cut and pasted into a personal statement. We can read about ourselves if we want to. Make the connections, but be yourself as if you were talking to us directly. Don't exaggerate in the personal statement. Again, we get a sense of that and it doesn't do you any favors. And don't use elaborate or formal language in the personal statement. Obviously, don't use slang, don't be disrespectful, but talk to us as if you were talking to us in person. That gives us a sense of who you are, and it allows us to get to know you and to realize that you're the right person for this course. Here are a number of repeated cliches that are used in personal statements, and there's lots of examples of these on the web. You will see them around the place. And as I looked at them, I realized I'd seen them myself so many times. Try and talk to us as if you were talking to us yourself directly. A lot of these common sentences come about from nervousness, or you say what you think we want to hear. Just be yourself. Overall advice about any of the applications is about being yourself. If you try to match this artificial ideal candidate, well, then we won't get to know you. And we know the ideal candidate in our heads, but they're anonymous. Don't make yourself anonymous. Use the opportunity to tell us about yourself and why you want to be here in your own words. And I think that will make all the difference for you. Good luck in your applications. And I hope to see many of you with us in the next academic year.
Martin, thank you so much. That was interesting and revealing at the same time. I think you gave all our online viewers a great snapshot of what we're looking for here when we get applications in from all across the globe. And no more than yourself having sat through online applications and paper applications. Certainly, it's about the person. That's why we're interested here in DCU. And we think that a year or 2 years, however long it takes for your thought, postgraduate masters, will add to you as a person. So Martin, thanks so much for that really wonderful insight. Now, before we go to the next section, I just want to say one or two things. Remember, the chat is open and the Q&A is open, so please feel free to ask us any questions, and we will do our level best to help you. And also, my colleague Niall is going to issue a number of polls on the call. We're interested in how you found out about the event, what your notification, what your motivation, excuse me, is. We will do a couple of polls now, and then we will run a few polls again later in the on the call. So Niall will look after that. And I will now move to the next session. And I mean, we've heard from a very distinguished alumnus on the value of a postgraduate degree, and we've heard a wonderful talk from Martin about what we here in the university are looking for from you. But now I think it would be very useful if we heard from people who had been through the mill, so to speak. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague and friend Ross Munnelly. Ross is the Director of Alumni Relations here in DCU, and we've always prided ourselves on the view that at DCU, once you're a graduate, you're not simply an alumnus for life, but you're also a friend of the university for life. And we've tried to instill that into our thousands now of both undergraduate and postgraduate students. I think it's a really important part of what we here in DCU are trying to do. And Ross has a wonderful panel lined up. Paddy Andrews from the Business School, Jing Wang from Humanities, Jenny O'Connell from the Institute of Education, Anka Champaneria from Engineering and Computing, and Shannon Nelson from Science and Health. And I think this will give all the viewers on the call a good idea of what actually goes on here at postgraduate studies. So Ross, without further ado, I will pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Fantastic stuff. And hello to everybody who's joining us. You can see that we have prospective students from all over the world tuned in today. And that's a very important point, because we also have graduates of DCU who are really based all over the globe. We have a tremendous global community of alumni. So that's a very fitting point to make. So for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk to some current students of the university, some current postgrads who are either studying part-time or full-time across our 5 faculties of study. So you're all very, very welcome, folks. So what we're going to do is we'll introduce you maybe one by one, just to tell us a little bit about your program of study. So Paddy, we might go to you straight away in the business school. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. And you're studying the Executive MBA, which of course is part-time. So Paddy, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks, Ross, and thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone for logging in today. Yes, I'm back in DCU. I actually did my undergraduate there about 13 or 14 years ago, and I went away and started my career. My undergraduate was in business and specializing in finance, and I've been working in financial services over the last decade. And very similar to what Alda had touched on earlier, speaking about, I suppose I'm at the stage in my career where I wanted to kind of progress a little bit further, and the opportunity, I suppose, to come back and undertake a postgraduate and the MBA in particular in the DCU Business School. It was a fantastic opportunity for me to explore, and I've been very fortunate, despite everything that's happened with COVID and where we're kind of heading towards now. I did, and our class did manage to get in-person learning over the last 9 or 10 weeks. And exactly what all the speakers so far have said, the interaction with the lecturers in the business school, everyone in the class is very passionate. And exactly, I definitely sense the point of when you're in your undergraduate studies in whatever university you're in, you may not be fully certain on the career path you want to go about. Whereas with the postgraduate, you've either had experience in that field and you're looking to basically broaden your horizons and your knowledge base, or as Alda touched on, you may be looking at a career change. But everyone in the course, every student is very passionate about learning and developing their skills. And that's most certainly the environment in the business school over the last 3 months with our executive MBA. And the engagement with the lecturers, I feel is such a massive plus. They're every bit as passionate. They understand why the students are there, and everyone in the class is there to learn as well. It's just a really, really positive environment to be in, and it's great to be back, like I say, having not studied in university for the best part of a decade. So it was just very nice to get back to DCU.
Paddy, that's a very interesting point that you make, because in a lot of cases, and I know this from having studied in the business school myself a couple of years ago, that often at time the people who are lecturing you are also the people that you might hear on the radio or see on TV. You know, our esteemed colleague Gary Murphy, of course, from the School of Law Government, who's hosting today. We would often see or hear Gary on the radio or talking on TV programs and so on. And that really adds to the quality of our postgraduate programs, that we have experts in the field who are teaching.
Most certainly. I mean, like I say, I was fortunate to get a flavour of it in my undergraduate, but coming back, the exposure to the lectures on my course so far, it's top of class stuff really across the board, no matter the modules we're looking at, whether it's marketing or accounting or behavioural organisation and change. You're getting best in class lectures, real life experiences from the teachers on the modules, but also the engagement that's driven in the class. It's certainly more, I feel, between lecturers and students, far more engaging than it might be perhaps in undergraduates. Undergraduates, obviously, it's a much bigger class, whereas with the postgraduate studies, it's a smaller class, so that inevitably will drive engagement, but also you're learning from your classmates as well. So the teachers and the lecturers facilitate that environment to learn and kind of nearly take you out of your comfort zone, but everyone wants to experience that. They're there to learn and to improve in whatever field of study they're in. And that engagement, you know, you're getting top class insight from the lecturers, and that then just feeds into the class as a whole and that engagement. So that's one of the massive strengths I feel of DCU, most certainly.
Great. Thanks for that, Paddy. And we might touch on some of that later on in the conversation when we're talking about the value of the network that you find yourself in when you commence your postgraduate studies at DCU. Next, we might go to you, Jean. You're obviously in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and you completed your Master's in Technology or Translation Technology in 2020.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Yeah, I completed a Master's of Science degree in Translation Technology last year, and I continued to do PhD study now. So I'm still with DCU.
And how are you finding things? Because I know from looking at the chat just before we came on to do our session here, somebody had asked about if we're going to be able to talk about PhD studies. So what has it been like so far in your PhD? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're researching?
Well, I'm gonna say it's very nerve-wracking in the first place, because it involves a lot of reading and writing, and also because it's in humanities, so it's not like science like biology, medicine stuff. You go to a real lab and you do experiments every day. You collect data, but it's very different from that. So for me, I've been reading and writing on my literature review and theoretical framework since last October. So it's been well over a year now, but I'm still doing that because it's a long process. It's ongoing, and you need to go back to it and update whatever you have read, and you need to make some corrections if it's necessary. But I enjoy reading myself, and also it's exciting for me to read like other researchers and to see what their experiments what their experiment results are and what I can learn from them. But moving forward, I think I will be able to do some experiments myself, because I'll be using like eye tracking, some real experiment devices, and also questionnaires. So I will be doing some experiments after all, but it's very different from like science departments.
Yeah, and that would be reflective of the difference between the faculties of study and so on. And of course, you're originally from China, and I think when we spoke last, I asked you, why did you choose DCU? And you said, believe it or not, your friends in China suggested DCU to you.
Yes, but to be fair, my friend was from Ireland. He's from Limerick, actually. So he has heard of this, and he knows that because I wanted to study languages, and he knows like I have a passion for this, And he said, oh, the very prestigious university that I know in Ireland is DCU. So he suggested me to look it up, and I had a little bit of Google search, and I realized my supervisor, like my current supervisor, she's a very big name in the field of research. But before that, I wasn't thinking of doing translation maybe, but she's the reason I got into doing research after all.
Yeah, fantastic. And that what you just said there really emphasizes the point that I was making with Paddy, that in a lot of cases in DCU, our academic staff are leaders in industry, and they are experts in terms of appearing on TV, radio, and so on in that regard. Jing, thank you very much for that. Ankit, I'm going to bring you in next in the Faculty of Engineering and Computing. So I'm conscious that you're doing the Masters in Computing, and you've decided to major in software engineering.
Yeah, first of all, hello everyone, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel of the students over here. So like, yeah, Ross, as mentioned, I am doing secure software engineering as a major, while my main degree is MSc in computing. So my course is more towards the security sector of coding. It's not really cyber security, but it's like security that involves coding, and it's like doing things that won't lead hackers to hack your system. So that's about it. And speaking about DCU, it's like it offers a very good reputation. And like Jing, I also had friends who were alumni from DCU. So I heard a lot about it. Then I went into it and I researched about it. So DCU focuses more towards research and teaching, which makes it a first choice for me, because that really aligns with my personal goal. So which is why I planned choosing DCU. But when I was looking and researching about DCU, it really had a lot to offer about the graduate employment rate as well, as mentioned by Gary earlier. So,
yeah, #1 in Ireland for graduate employabilities, and we're very, very proud of that. And especially when we hear that, Ankit, you joined us all the way from India. So again, when we talk about our global network for DCU, we talk about in a couple of years' time, or next year, when you become a graduate, and wherever you go in the world and choose to take your next career steps, you'll be a very proud alumnus of the university. And again, just emphasizing that global connection. So we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes as well, Ankit. Thank you for sharing that. And we're going to go to the Faculty of Science and Health. And Turlock, I know you're joining us. You're doing the Masters in Astrophysics and Relativity.
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to report on that. It's an amazing campus and an amazing faculty to be part of. I found myself wanting to move forward into astrophysics from my grad, and I found that the astrophysics and relativity postgrad would be an excellent opportunity, as the lecturers are straight from the Center for Relativity and Astrophysics Research in DCU, CFAR. An amazing group, and the people who teach you, given that they're teaching you the stuff directly from their own work, are highly passionate in it. And I find it has given me an excellent opportunity to hone the computing and data analysis skills that you may have gotten in your grad. But as well as that, I found that, say, in some cases, if you're graduating from a degree that might not have had as much analytical modules, that this course has a great integration for that, and isn't a complete barrier for someone who might feel they're lacking in that area.
Yeah,
and of course, if you are, there's always the Maths Learning Center for that.
Yeah, so a very important point that we haven't mentioned so far, obviously enough, is the supports that are available for students. And of course, we have an excellent career service. And you, Turlock, with the Masters in Astrophysics and Relativity, it's the first year of that program running, and already it's taken shape to be an excellent qualification.
Oh, most certainly, yes.
And obviously, you're studying full time as well, Turlock. So conscious, Alda earlier on spoke about studying part-time, and you can obviously work full-time and study part-time in the evenings and so on. But in your case, that master's is full-time. So what's it like during the day having a fairly full schedule?
Well, I find the schedule, whilst dense, still allows for good opportunities to do after class study, as well as get involved in, say, tutoring the graduate students. So while you may not be able to necessarily partake in a full-time job or part-time, there are some opportunities on campus for that, apart from opportunities to study.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the busy nature of the program as well. But I know that, for example, we speak. Our president in the opening segment with Gary spoke about the professional and personal development. And if we were to look at the personal development a little bit, I know you've been involved in, I think, is it the rock climbing,
Yes.
the rock climbing club and so on. So even though you're in a very intense program and it's, as you said yourself, the schedule is quite dense, but in the evenings you do have an opportunity to relax a little bit and get a little bit of balance.
And partake, pursue clubs and societies and opportunities that you may not have been able to do, say, during your normal life, your normal life outside of college. So it's, for instance, with the rock climbing, it's a good way to get into the gym without having a full membership to access the walls. Plus, as a person who's interested in sports, I had never rock climbed before until I came to DCU, and I found that these clubs and SOCs in DCU, whatever their subject may be, are very welcoming for newcomers, and of course very welcoming in teaching you the ropes in that regard.
Brilliant. And that we talked about as well, Turlock, the opportunity to meet and network within your program, but there's also that networking opportunity and meeting new people through the clubs and societies as well.
Yes, and in some cases you may even meet people who are currently doing their PhD that might have work connected to what you're interested in, and that is a good stepping stone to see where you might want to go after your postgrad.
Yeah. Fantastic to hear that, and thanks for sharing that, Turlock, because you can really see where the student experience in DCU links up the professional learning within the classroom alongside then the personal relationships that you develop with fellow students through extracurricular activities like the clubs and societies and so on. We might move on to our excellent DCU Institute of Education. And Jenny, you're joining us. You're doing the PME, so the Professional Masters in Education at post-primary level. And conscious for you, you're a graduate of the Analytical Science program in DCU.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much, Ross. It's great to be here. Delighted to be in such a great panel. But yeah, as you said, I graduated from Analytical Science back in just 2020. They're gone actually, and I've just joined into my second year of the Professional Masters of Education for post-primary, and I love it. Like I can't recommend this course enough. Obviously, it's been a bit different, since we started. We have been online. All of first year was online. And then second year, just after semester one there, we were on campus for 3 out of 10 of the weeks. But I have to say that the flexibility in this course is it's adapted extremely well to online circumstances. And it's just been really good in terms of placement. So the way that the course is run is that you're on placement for the full 2 years with lectures then in the evenings. So that's placement in schools. And personally, that was the kind of selling point for me for this course, because it meant that you do get a full experience of what it's like to be a teacher in a school, and not maybe just for 4 weeks in January, maybe 6 weeks elsewhere. You're there for the full year, and you do get the full taste of what it's like to be a teacher and teaching like a class for the whole year as opposed to just one topic. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And of course, because of your program, obviously there's a huge practical nature, and you're out in the schools. You're out in the school setting every week. And what's that like?
It's great. Now it is. It's quite different. Like when I always wanted to be a teacher, and I've only thought, I suppose, in the COVID world, with masks and distancing. So it's been a bit different in that case. But the experience has just been fantastic. And when you're a teacher, you know, no day is the same. Every single day is different, and that's one of my favorite things about it. You never know what's going to happen in a classroom on a given day. Especially now, I teach science, so anything could happen. And I think even with COVID, that kind of school atmosphere is still there and still very strong. And to be honest, like, you do so much of your learning in the school placement, and then what you learn in the lectures just reinforces that. And you have tutorials with people who are teachers and people who may be actually ex-principals. So you get really good insights into different methods of teaching. And there's a lot of peer kind of work and explaining. Let's say I used one method in the classroom, someone else may have done something different, and a lot of collaboration in that case.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, because we talk about the network and the connections within your own class and so on. So has there been times where you might try something that hasn't worked in a classroom, but you can share that then with your fellow classmates and talk about maybe how to tweak things or change things and learn from each other?
Oh, absolutely. Just one example, I guess, like in second year now, we have to do a research project, and we have a kind of group, a support group within that project. So I'm doing my project on group work in the classroom, and a lot of it is trial and error, you know, saying, I'm going to try this method, see how it gets on, make a few notes, and then you meet up with your support group and exchange those ideas. You get feedback from them, and then you give them feedback on what they've done. And I'm finding that really helpful, because group work is something a bit challenging, I guess, at this current moment in time. But it is something I've always kind of been striving to improve on in the classroom, and to get the opportunity to practically do it and get feedback on it has been fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant that you mentioned the group work, because obviously enough through group work comes the development of really good teamwork skills. And I think it was Alda spoke about those skills that you get from postgrad study that lead to faster career progression. But before we go back to Paddy, I'm just going to ask you, because you're a DCU graduate, and I'm conscious that there is a lot of DCU graduates tuned in on the call this evening. You were entitled to a 10% master's reduced fee as a graduate of DCU.
Absolutely, and that was another selling point of the course for me. As I said, I'd known since I'd say midway through my time in secondary school that I wanted to be a teacher, but with the 10% reduced master's fee, it did mean that I was able to do it in the college that I did my undergrad in, and I absolutely loved. But it was at more of an affordable rate, I guess, and just more accessible. And it was just even more of the push I needed to come back to DCU to do my postgrad.
Brilliant. Well, we're delighted to have you back, and we really appreciate your loyalty. And again, it's an indication of maybe some of the benefits that are there for our global alumni community. So going back to you for a second, Paddy, you are obviously busy during the day. You've got a lot going on in your daytime, but you're studying part-time. So you have to make time to study outside of the classroom. And I know you've a big event coming up in, is it a week's time or a week and a half time now? You're getting married, but all of this you're combining it, which really as part of the program emphasizes the ability of our students to multitask and combine an awful lot of things at one time.
Yeah, and look, it is, you have to be structured, you have to have planning done, whatever course you decide to go on, whatever faculty it's in. You're there to learn, you're there to try and improve yourself. And to do that, you've got to be willing to pay the price, really. It's not easy, but the benefits that you get from undertaking a course like this, or academically, in your career then, when hopefully you've finished it, and like the people you meet as well, the experience is worth that. And I think it is a massive insight, I suppose, that if you undertake a postgrad and you're looking to further your career professionally after that, you are going to have lots of tasks. You're going to be managing teams or managing companies or whatever field you're in. You need to have time management is an obvious thing that you need to be able to do that, and I've had exposure to it. And for me, yes, I have a very understanding employer at the minute who has supported me to do the MBA. And I think from speaking to people in my class, everyone in the class is fortunate to have that employers, whatever industry they're in, they see the benefit for their employees going and undertaking this course. And they in turn will get that benefit when their employees come back having completed whatever course that they've gone and done. They'll bring the insights, the benefits, the positive aspects of that course back into the organization.
Yeah. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, it's a brilliant point because the expertise that you're, and in a lot of cases, especially if you're studying part-time and working full-time, you can actually focus a lot of your assignments on your day-to-day work to help improve business and help improve the organization that you're working in. So in actual fact, when it goes to speaking with your organization about maybe funding your postgraduate study, you can actually make the case that I'm going to dedicate a lot of my assignments to improving our processes or culture or whatever it is that we want to do in the organization.
Oh, absolutely. It's so practical to what you're doing. Funny, I just finished one of my assignments this week, focusing on my own business. And look, if you're going to undertake it on a part-time basis, you have to have the support of your employer. You know, you're using up, for us, our lectures are every Thursday, from Thursday kind of lunchtime through to the evening. But I think any employer can see the benefits that, one, I am passionate about doing it and can bring that expertise back into the organization, not just for our clients, but also for fellow staff members. Like we'd have kind of younger people who are starting out their careers with us, and you can provide that real insight and be a sounding board for them as well. So there's massive benefits to you as an individual by undertaking these courses, but you're bringing that back to your own organization as well, and the benefits with it as well. So it can be time consuming, but the benefits are absolutely worth it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paddy. And I'm just looking at the questions coming in. I think it's Frederike Roerding has asked, and do most courses have a focus on group work? So Jenny has already said that. We know the Executive MBA has as well, Paddy. Ankit, the School of Computing, from your perspective, group work involved for you on a daily basis?
Well, not really on the daily basis, but it's like the assignments that we do. A few of the modules might just have group assignments. So speaking about like the current semester that I was in, there's only one subject that had a group assignment, but for the other majors, it might be different. So since my flatmates are from data analysis, I know a bit about them. So there are group assignments, but not everything is based on a group basis.
Yeah. So you've got that balance, and of course from doing the group work, that shows you and teaches you real life skills that you can bring to the workforce with you, whereby when you're working as part of a team, you have to understand the personalities within the team on that group assignment in terms of the start, the middle, and the end of the project, and understanding how people work better.
Yeah. And speaking about that, adding up to that, there's also peer review. So even if you are working in a group, you have to put in all your efforts. Not like one person can do all the things and others can just relax. It's like everyone has to put in efforts, and then you can just individually review each other that how they have worked. That also kind of grows a good bond between the entire group, and you can adjust to things and everything.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that, Ankit. And Jean, we might come back to you in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. And what advice would you give, particularly around think back to when you were applying for your master's in translation technology? What advice would you give to any of our people on the call this evening who are considering studying at DCU?
Well, I think the presentation that Martin just talked about was really brilliant. And he mentioned a couple of bullet points that I did when I was back in my day, when I was doing my application. But I think the most importantly, like Martin mentioned, is to have someone to proofread for you to go through your documents, and whether it's the personal statement or your CV, because it never hurts to have someone else to read it. Like also, I asked my friend who was a native English speaker, so he would know some expressions that maybe I wasn't familiar with. So that way it was very beneficial for me. And also he would notice like some errors, like whether grammatical errors or like choice of words, that kind of errors. So I would say having someone to proofread all your application documents would be very beneficial.
Great. That's really good advice. Really good in terms of making sure that your application stands out from the crowd. Paddy, I think you might have your hand up. Is that right? To come in and ask a question. If you do, great. If not, I have a question for Jenny anyway.
That was a mistake, sorry.
No problem, no problem. Jenny, I think Danielle O'Reilly has asked, do you have any tips for the interview?
Yeah, I suppose, well, there isn't an interview to get into the course for the PME, but in terms of your school placement interview, I know it sounds original, but be yourself, I guess, and make sure to bring across the points that you can, what can you bring extra to the school? So not just what subjects you're going to teach, you know, could you coach the football team? Could you coach basketball team? Could you do the science club? So bring those extra things, because I know I always found the teachers that you kind of get on with the best aren't just the teacher. They are the person who coaches after school or during lunchtime. So you know, make sure to let them know that you're not just going to be there to teach a 40-minute class, that you're willing to do a bit extra, because that's what they always ask for in interviews as well.
I think that's a brilliant point, Jenny, because it actually goes back to what Gary and Alda, but also Martin were speaking about, where DCU are interested in people. And rather than when you're going for an interview, telling somebody what you're going to do, if you describe what kind of a person you are and the things that you're interested in and that you like to get involved in, that helps the school principal or whoever it is see and understand all of the many different areas you'll be able to help out in the school as part of being a good citizen within the school environment and so on. So thanks for sharing that. Turlock, obviously with your course being a new program, you're going to be trailblazers in this area for DCU, but do you have any advice for people who are considering studying with DCU at the moment?
Advice? I feel it would be good to, research. Well, if you're coming from abroad, definitely research the surrounding vicinity regarding where you'd be staying, especially do it in a year in advance if you're planning on going next year, because even for native students, in some cases, they aren't able to find accommodation nearby. But I would say with regards to my course, and probably due to COVID, the online and on-campus classes, my classes are both online and on campus, which allows for students who would otherwise not be able to go to the degree to be able to attend even from, say, many counties away.
Yeah, so it gives you that flexibility and understand. You raise a brilliant point about being prepared and so on. And just a reminder to all of our people in attendance today as well, we've got excellent campus accommodation, actually across our 3 campuses in DCU. I see, Ankit, you're nodding to that.
Yeah, because I am staying on campus myself.
Brilliant. So you've no excuses for being late to lectures, Ankit.
Yeah, and it's very nearby, and everything is, unless you are on a different you're staying on another campus and you have your lectures on another campus, that's when the situation of being late arises. But for me, like, my lectures are on Glasnevin and I'm staying on Glasnevin, so it's quite easy for me.
Yeah, and the campus in Glasnevin, if you're staying on, you obviously have the gym on campus, so we've an award-winning gym and swimming pool area, and for clubs and societies like Turlock was speaking about. You've also got the Londis shop, you've got the Helix, the performance centre, you've got restaurants, Starbucks, coffee outlets, and you've also got the Albert College Park right beside us. So if you want to get out and go for a walk and clear your head, you have the beautiful surroundings of the park, Ankit.
Yeah, true. Since I myself am a part of a few clubs and societies, and I have the gym membership as well. So it's pretty accessible for me. And then like after dinner or something, if we just want to go around the university for a walk, or like Albert College is usually closed, but we usually go there for morning walks. And like if you are a dog lover, it's the best place to be, because you'll see a lot of dogs and you can just play with them. So yeah, like being on campus has its own benefits.
Brilliant. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I just want to thank all of our panelists, Jean, Jenny, Paddy, Turlock, Ankit. Thank you so much. And I want to come back to just one point as I sign off from what our president said, and that our DCU graduates, we're not just appointable when it comes to the job sector, we're promotable. And by doing postgrad studies, that really strengthens your CV, strengthens your ability to be promotable right the way through your career. I know there's a lot of questions coming in on the chat. For any of the really specific course questions, you'll see my brilliant colleague, Sakshi Kumaraswamy, who also studied in DCU. She's a graduate from the MSc in Emerging Media, but now works with us in the Student Recruitment Office. Sakshi has, I think a couple of times there, popped in the information about logging on to Pubble tomorrow and Friday, where if you have any of those really specific course questions about modules and timings and so on, once you submit them on Pubble, we will get our specific people within the faculties who are experts in the area that can give you really pinpoint those answers in terms of the detailed information that you're looking for. So without further ado, thank you again, everybody. And I know Gary is waiting to come back in. So Gary, delighted to hand back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ross. Yeah, that was really fascinating, and I learned a lot, as I'm sure the prospective students did as well. I think we all got a very good glimpse of what it's like to study here at DCU. It's not simply just about the lectures, but as you point out, Ross, I mean, our sort of superstructure on our campuses is second to none, really. The gym, the pool, the parks, the fresh air, our state-of-the-art library, libraries across all three campuses. So yeah, I mean, we got a very good glimpse of it there. Now, I just need to make a couple of other announcements. Niall is going to offer a couple of more polls. We're just going to do one on motivation and one on where you stand in the application process. We do know from experience that a lot of applications are done quite late, which is fine, but it would be useful for us in the university to know where those who are watching are in the application process, and not to have started is fine as well. So we just you might fill out that poll for Niall. And now a very important part, of course, of thinking about postgraduate education is funding it. Our colleagues in the international office are going now to host a separate Zoom for our non-EU viewers. I think, as you would have seen from what both Jing and Ankit said, DCU is a tremendous university for non-EU students. We make no discrimination whatsoever, of course, when students are on campus. A DCU student is a DCU student. But certainly our international office can help and has helped literally thousands of non-EU students over the years. So I would invite those who would want to go onto that call. Our colleagues in the international office will facilitate that. And we, those of us who are going to stay on this call, we are now going to see a very useful video from our colleagues in relation to how you might fund your postgraduate program. And so what I'm going to do now is to hand back over to Niall, and we will start that video. Once that video ends, I will come back onto the call and conclude with some final remarks.
So thank you for that, Niall. I think we just need to reshare that again because the volume is not coming through. And just to emphasize Gary's point as well, where for any of our non-EU students, Sakshi has popped the link into the chat. So if you are attending the non-EU presentation by our colleagues in the International Office, the link for that is in the chat. If you just want to drop into that, and it'll take you to the next chat. So sorry, Niall, I think you might be ready to share again.
Everybody, my name is Brenda and I work in the Communications and Customer Services section in SUSY. This video presentation is to give you an overview of SUSY's eligibility criteria and the grant application process for the 22-23 academic year. So who are SUSY and what do we do? We're Ireland's single awarding authority for student funding for both further and higher education. And there are two types of funding available to students studying at postgrad level: a contribution towards postgraduate fees and a maintenance grant for those who qualify for the special rate grant. I'll go into more detail about the qualifying conditions for special rate later in the presentation. We administer this funding in line with legislation, including the annual student grant scheme. SUSY funding is available for postgrad courses at levels 8, 9 and 10, undertaken at approved institutions in the state, and at 4 approved institutions in Northern Ireland, which are Queen's University, the University of Ulster, St Mary's College of Education and Stranmillis College. As I said earlier, both a fee grant is available and a maintenance grant for those who qualify for the special rate grant. Further information on the approved courses in Northern Ireland is available on our website, susy.ie. Postgraduate level, funding is available for a maximum period of 4 years, and that's irrespective of previous grant funding. For example, somebody may have previously completed a 2-year level 9 master's course without any grant aid and is now applying to SUSY for the first time for a 4-year level 10 doctorate course. They would only be eligible for funding for the first 2 years of this new course and would have to fund the remaining 2 years themselves. In order to be eligible for any funding from SUSY, every applicant must meet all of our 5 key eligibility criteria, which are as follows: nationality, residency, progression, attending an approved course in an approved college, and the reckonable income for 2021 must be under the maximum threshold. And now explain a little bit more on each of the criteria. The first one we're going to look at is nationality. In order to be eligible, applicants must be an Irish, EU, EEA, UK or Swiss national, or have specific permission to remain in the state as granted by the Department of Justice. And a list of all the eligible permissions can be found in the nationality section of our website. The next one that we're going to look at is residency, and this will determine what type of funding an applicant may be eligible for. Applicants must have been ordinarily resident in Ireland, the EU, the EEA, the UK or Switzerland for 3 of the last 5 years. If they're resident in Ireland for 3 of the last 5 years, then they are known as a student and may be eligible for both the fee grant and the maintenance grant. But if they're a resident outside of Ireland but within the EU, EEA, UK or Switzerland, they are known as a tuition student and they are only eligible for a fee grant and not eligible for a maintenance grant. The next one that we're going to look at is progression. In order to be eligible, applicants must be progressing in their education, and by that we mean increasing their National Framework of Qualifications or NFQ level. If you have a qualification, we can only fund you for a course at a higher level than this, and that's irrespective of where and when you received this qualification or if you had previous grant funding. Next one is attending an approved course in an approved college. Applicants must be attending an approved full-time course in an approved institution to be eligible for funding. SUSY's legislation doesn't allow us to fund any part-time courses or courses in private institutions, and a list of all approved institutions is available on the SUSY website. And the final eligibility criteria that we're going to look at is reckonable income for 2021. To be eligible, an applicant's reckonable income must fall under specific thresholds. This income will be a factor in determining what type of funding they may receive. Applications are assessed with regard to gross household income from the previous year. So for applications for the 22-23 academic year, we'll be looking at the gross income for all parties to the application from the 1st of January to the 31st December 2021. If the income has been reduced in 2022, we can reassess on the current income. So if this applies to you, be sure to advise us of this when you're making your application. There was an announcement in Budget 2022 that there will be an increase to the rates of maintenance grant and an expansion to the income thresholds for the 22-23 academic year. It's important to note that SUSY operates under an annual grant scheme and that these changes are dependent on them being written into the 22 scheme, which will be published in spring 2022. Where the household income for 2021 is, For a family with less than 4 dependent children, under €55,240. For a family with 4 to 7 dependent children, under €60,595. And for a family with 8 or more dependent children, under €65,700, you may be eligible for grant funding from SUSI. There are two different types of award at postgraduate level. The standard rate of grant, which is a €3,500 contribution towards postgrad fees, and a special rate of grant, which is up to €6,270 towards postgrad fees, and a maintenance grant of either €2,575 or €6,115 in total, depending on the distance from the applicant's home to the campus of the college that they're attending. I mentioned special rate earlier on in the presentation. Now I'm going to give you an explanation of exactly what that is and how an applicant can qualify for it. Essentially what it is, it's a top-up on the ordinary rate of maintenance grant. But to be eligible, you must meet the following criteria. The total household income for 2021 must be less than €24,500 and include, on the 31st December 2021, income from an eligible long-term Department of Social Protection payment. There's a list of all the eligible payments on the SUSI website. So if an applicant does qualify for special rate of grant, the rates are as follows. Those who live 30 kilometres or less from the college, the total amount payable to them will be €2,575, which is paid in 9 monthly instalments of €286.11. And for those who live 30 kilometres or over from the college, the total amount payable is €6,115, which works out at €679.44 per month. When applying for SUSI funding, it's important that an applicant chooses the correct class to be assessed as. There are two different categories of class: dependent, including mature dependent, and independent. And why is this relevant or important? Because it determines whose income is taken into consideration. Dependent student is someone who is under 23 on the 1st January of the year of their first entry into further or higher education, and they'll be assessed with reference to their own income and if their parents are legal guardians. A mature dependent student is someone who is 23 or over on the 1st of January of the year of their first entry or re-entry after a 3-year break in studies to further higher education, but was living with their parents or guardians in the October prior to this. They will also be assessed with reference to their own income and that of their parents or legal guardians. To be assessed as an independent student, an applicant must be 23 or over on the 1st of January of the year of their first entry or re-entry into further higher education and have been living independently from their parents from the October prior to this. It's important to note that an applicant's class is defined at their first point of entry to further higher education, and they can only be reclassified when moving from further to higher education or after a full 3-year break in studies. If you've decided you're going to apply to SUSI, here's some things you should do. Step 1, register your account. You'll get a username, a password and a PIN. Make sure to keep these login details safe as you'll need them to access your account. Step 2, complete your application. Step 3, submit the application online. You should receive a confirmation email within 24 hours of submitting your application. If you don't, contact our support desk and they'll be more than happy to help you. When you're making an application, you're going to need the following details: the PPSN for the applicant, PPSN for parties to the application. So for a dependent student, that's their parents or legal guardians, and for an independent student, their spouse or cohabitant. An estimate of 2021's income. Your course details. You don't have to have accepted a place on a course to apply for SUSI, and you can change your course details at any time by logging into your SUSI account. Your AIR code. This allows to calculate the distance from your home to the campus of the college you're attending accurately. Once you have all of those, you can click Start Application. Once your application is submitted, the first stage is it goes for Provisional Assessment, where it's going to be queued for review by the assessment team. Once that's been completed, you'll either be awarded, and we'll send you an award letter advising of the course you've been awarded to and the rate of grant awarded, or if we've determined that you don't meet one or more of the eligibility criteria, we'll send you a letter advising of the reasons your application was refused. You may also be issued a checklist letter requesting supporting documents. If we do request some documents from you, be sure to return them within the time frame stipulated on the checklist letter, and if there's going to be any delay, just give a quick call to the support desk to advise of the delay. If you've submitted requested documents, the next thing is your application goes for a review assessment, where again it's going to be reviewed by one of the assessment team. Once this has been completed, you'll either be awarded and sent an award letter advising of the rate of grant and the course we've awarded you to, or if you've been refused, we'll send you a letter advising of the reasons for the refusal. You may also be issued an additional checklist letter requesting more supporting documents, and as previously, if there's going to be any delay in these, just let the support desk know of this. So here's some important tips for you. Apply early. We will open for the 22-23 academic year in spring 22. We have a priority closing date in July 2022, and all applications received prior to this will be assessed first. Include relevant persons on your application. If you have a sibling or a parent who will also be attending a course in the 22-23 academic year, they may improve the rate or grant you're eligible for, so make sure to advise us of their details when you're filling in your application. You can track your application's progress at any time by logging into your SUSI account. Return requested documentation complete and on time. If anybody in the household has income from self-assessment, if possible, file your tax returns early in 2022, as we won't be able to finalise your application until we can see that you have done this. And finally, here's how to keep in touch with us here in SUSI. Our website susi.ie has a wealth of information there and also some really good helpful videos. You can contact our support desk at any time through email, social media or telephone help desk, and all the contact details are available on our website. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this video helpful.
Thanks so much to Brenda and to her colleagues in SUSI for providing us with that very informative and helpful video on how the SUSI grant system operates. I just want to finish up by saying a few words about the university. I've been in DCU for over a quarter of a century now. I did a PhD in DCU and then later was lucky enough to secure a lectureship and sort of worked my way up to the position I hold today. So I am an advocate not simply for the university as one of its staff, but also a graduate of this, what I consider to be a really great university. It's a university where I think you'll have seen from our alumnus and our current students that does put people first. That is the most important thing. And I think you will recognize that if and when you come to DCU. And we hope very much that many of you watching here today will come to DCU and join us. We have great offerings across all our 5 faculties and our 3 campuses. We think we offer a robust and rigorous education, but we also offer a good rounded experience. I mean, hopefully we will get over this plague of COVID and that we can all meet on campus at some stage when the 22-23 academic year begins. And I really do hope that will be a COVID-free existence. But for now, I just want to thank you all for logging on, for asking your questions in the chat. As Ross said earlier, we will get back to you with specific queries over the next few days if you have very specific faculty queries. We hope you enjoyed and found fruitful and beneficial our talks and videos. I thank you for engaging with us, and we hope you you come to DCU. It's a great place to work, but it's also a great place to study. And we do think there are tremendous opportunities from having a postgraduate degree. We always have a saying here at DCU that you can go anywhere from here, and indeed I think you can. And with that, I bid you farewell. Thank you very much for checking in with us today.